joining us. For everybody
Absolutely.
tuning in for the first time, I'm Jessica Marshall. I'm one of the partners at Anderson and Boback.
Jan Boback, another partner at Anderson and Boback, and welcome to our Talk Tuesday.
Yeah. So today we have Doug Katz joining us from SplitReady. And we're very excited to have you. Thank you for agreeing to come on.
Oh, absolutely.
So we understand that in a past life, you worked in like the mortgage and lending industry. Is that right?
It is, and not even really a past life. You know, the thing on SplitReady is it's a community of all different disciplines, right? So I founded SplitReady, but I'm still an active mortgage banker. I originate and I also provide consulting. And you know, if somebody's way out and doesn't yet know what they're doing from the standpoint of disposition of the home, a lot of times I can help them along and develop a plan as opposed to just doing origination. I've been in the business about 19, 20 years. So at this point I'm not going to say everything because anytime I do that, then I get thrown a curveball, but I've seen about everything.
Yeah. So how did you get into SplitReady and founding this community? What sort of made you?
As I said, I've been in the lending industry a long time. And, I think many lenders, as well as any professional, as they go, they sort of move through their experience and come to a certain realization where they're, I'm not going to say a calling because sometimes that sounds like cliche, but where they find that they need to be to help people. And, I had originated my own loans. I've done a lot. And I had worked with divorced people a lot and happened upon who's now my partner actually with SplitReady. We founded it together. And this was before we even founded it. We were at an event together for a mutual friend. We'd all worked at BMO. And she was a certified divorce financial, I always say advisor, but that's not right, CDFA.
Planner.
And she's like, well, you know what? Maybe there's something like that for lending because I was getting back into running my own business and not managing anymore. So I looked into it. I found that there was a certification. So I took my experience and meshed it with the certification to kind of specialize in that area. And I'd always worked with divorcing people. So from that perspective, it was nothing new. It was just a codification in a lot of ways of what I knew. But what I found was I looked and said, wow, this is really a process, right? This is, I'm ex-military. The military, gets dogged out on a lot of things, but they are fantastic at planning. And there's this thing called the 5-paragraph operations order. It was a way that the military deploys anywhere in the world, and they follow this checklist, this process, and they can deploy anywhere because they work through all the potential things that you need to think through. And it occurred to me, wow, why is there not something like that from a divorce perspective, right? Where people can sort of look at it and say, every divorce is different. Just like in the military, every operation is different. But there's a process to go through so that you don't forget anything. You don't skip over something. It could be really, really important. So we looked and, I looked and she was on the finance side and I was on the mortgage side. And I looked and God, all these other disciplines really play well together when the client really understands what they need to do. So there's kind of like a self-discovery aspect of what we do to help people figure out what's the right next step. And a lot of times it helps our friends and referral partners in the legal profession because clients come to them educated, which is a big piece of it.
Sure. Yeah, I saw, actually, I came across your podcast. I was listening to your podcast with our friend and colleague, Sandra Crawford, and our really good friend, Michelle Trainer from New York City.
Yes.
She was on our show as well. And I was listening to your podcast and I thought, what is this? SplitReady? I got to look into it. And I think it's a fascinating idea. And so how does it work? I mean, we've got some questions already on our Facebook feed. People want to know, how do they join?
It's a great question. So, there's two sides of it. Another piece of this was I brought in part of a business that I created years ago that didn't work, right? I was in the disaster preparedness world, right? And it always occurred to me the real reason that people don't prepare for disasters is sometimes they don't know how. They don't know where they are. And the whole basis of that business was take an assessment figure out where point A is to get to point B. Getting to point B doesn't help you at all if you don't know where you are. And that business was based on taking an assessment, figuring out really how prepared you want to be, how prepared you are, and how to get there. And it didn't work. Again, I think you learn as much from failure as you do from success. But what it taught me was that it was an interesting call to action. People who had gone through that process said, this was really educational. I really did learn a lot, but I'm just not ready to do it. Then I was sitting there one day, and Mariah, who's my partner, Mariah Pleasant, and I were talking. I'm like, well, divorce is really the disaster that is coming in some ways, right? So it's there's a lot of similarities. Instead of food and water and all the other things you need for survival, it's finance, it's legal, it's all these things that you need to bring together. So the whole SplitReady process for an individual starts with our assessment. It's a basic 10-minute assessment. And all it really does is at a very high level help them figure out what they don't know. Because I think people go into divorce and they're like, you go this way because that's what I see on TV. It's what I've seen other people do, but it's not necessarily the right way to go. Right. So they go through this short assessment. With that, they get a free subscription, and the free subscription it gets them access to the site, gets them access to, there's some tools on there, things that they can do to help budget, help figure out different components of their post-divorce world. We just launched SplitReady University. We've got one class up right now, but we're building other classes where there'll be courses and classes that people can take to be able to gain education. And there are private forums that they have access to where they can ask questions. We've very deliberately not gone the social media route because we think that there's some aspects of security and things that we can manage much better internally. And finally, they get access to our Divorce Pro Network. And our Divorce Pro Network, a very unique thing that we've created. Now, there's other networks out there. But what we've done is we've taken it, I joke it's like Garanimals when I was a kid, right? Like kids who couldn't match their clothes, you could pick two things and put them together, and you would never look like a schlump because things would match. What we've done is we've taken the different disciplines and we've created a badge system where there are prerequisites for our professionals to be on the network. And if they have those professional experience, professional, all the things that contribute to defining who they are, then they get those badges. And a client can look and say, well, you know what, maybe I'm going somewhat pro se, right? Meaning they're not going to get fully represented. They're doing limited scope representation potentially, but they need someone who's got some certain skill sets. Maybe the house is the only asset. Well, maybe they want to go. I know that there's some divorce professionals who are family law attorneys and real estate attorneys. There's guys like me who I'm a divorce mortgage pro and a divorce credit pro. If all they have is a house, and I also mediate, but interestingly enough, I don't yet have enough experience because I've just recently started mediating to be a divorce mediator pro on my own platform. We're very, very dedicated to making sure that all the prerequisites are met and that we're curated and people are certified so that a client can go once they get that subscription, they can go to our site and look and say, wow, I can look at this person and graphically know what they do. We've also created a very granular directory. And the other thing that you don't see with some of the other programs or the other competitors out there to us is a needs-based directory or needs-based search criteria. It's usually very siloed. It's an attorney or a financial advisor. And instead, what we've done is we've said, well, what do people need? It occurred to me one day that when you shop on Amazon, like I have a very specific way of doing it, right? Like I'll pick what I need, look at the reviews, I'll go down the list and put the criteria I want, save a lot of time. There's nothing out there right now, or there wasn't, where someone could look and say, geez, I need a Spanish-speaking financial advisor who focuses in the LGBT community. There's nothing out there right now. And people like to work with people who have the skill set they want and maybe people who have some similarities in background.
So you indicated that you have some educational seminars. Mm-hmm. Do you have to be a member to be a part of that seminar, or
Well,
is
yeah, the way it works is the subscription's free. With the educational classes, some will be free, but some will be for a cost, kind of as an add-on. And what we're looking to as we build this platform is have our professionals from the Divorce Pro Network co-author and help create that content so that we can really build on it. And I should stress that where the typical platform really focuses on finance, legal, and therapy, right? That's the kind of big three you see. We cover everything. So I'm also, I talk about my own criteria. I'm a divorce safety pro, and that's one of the badges that we have, right? So there are people who, like me, who, I'm ex-military and I'm a second-degree black belt in a martial art. I could teach somebody really basic self-defense. I could help them understand what they need to do to maybe secure a home and have a plan to make sure that their home is safe and secure after a divorce. We have people on our platform who are wellness experts in diet and exercise. We've got, technology experts. After a divorce, technology could be a big thing, either from understanding the technology that you would use to manage your post-divorce life, right? Like some of the family tracking software where you can track hours and things like that, to how do you make sure that your own personal technology stuff is secure, right? Like how many platforms do you use? How many things do you do that after divorce leave you with some pretty gaping security holes? So we try and cover everything. The only thing we don't really do, my partner and I are not lawyers. We don't practice law, but we like to kind of cover everything else, in that world.
Interesting.
Aren't you sad that you're not a lawyer?
You know what? Sometimes I look and I say I gotta say, having done this for a long time, but really, I don't know, in the last 5 years, gotten close to lawyers, I do think that there's a real misconception with family law attorneys. I really do. I think, the people we've had on our podcast and the people I've dealt with, you got to talk about Sandra Crawford and stuff. I've met very few lawyers who fit that mold that you saw in like Divorce Story, right? On Netflix, right? There aren't that many out there, but the really good ones don't play well for drama, right? Like on TV or something like that, that's not fun. That's not interesting to watch. So, but what I found are really consummate professionals. So although I dog out my lawyer friends, I really have found really professional people.
Yeah, I'd be sad if I wasn't a lawyer. Kim, wouldn't you be sad?
Oh yeah, so sad.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I wish I was a divorce safety pro though. Wow, is there a certification for that?
You know what? With some of them, it's interesting you asked that, is that there is some challenge in figuring out how to enmesh that, right? So, we are looking at bringing some ex-police officers on as an example, but it really depends on what you're looking for, right? So that's where the granularity of the search criteria come in, because safety being sort of this umbrella concept, I could teach self-defense, but maybe not, I'm not like an NRA instructing, gun instructor. I wouldn't want to teach. I know how to do it, but I'm not certified. And we're very much based on people having the certifications where we know that they're going to teach the right thing. So with that, it's really knowing what that badge means and then looking at it to say, okay, who's the right person to use for the skills that I need to bring on.
Mm-hmm. I see. We went to law school with Ann Chesney Mudd, who I see as one of your professionals.
Yes, she's great. She's fantastic.
Yeah, we love her. She's a great mediator. We've used her in cases, and she's a great person to have on your network.
Oh yeah, she's got a really interesting. She's like a mathematician and some other really interesting things. But yeah, great people. I've met a lot of great people through the collaborative group, and they've been really supportive. So we're slowly but surely getting people onto the platform. I mean, we're really still in startup mode, but what's good is it's allowed us to grow at the right pace. So a lot of things that we've looked at, as we talk to clients, we talk to other professionals, they've given us great input on how to grow the platform a little bit better.
Sure, a great idea. Kudos to you. I think it's
Thank you.
It's an awesome endeavor. Awesome.
I was late to the program. Did anyone answer some of the questions that are coming in on Facebook?
I didn't see any.
Okay, well, here's one. Who are some competitors to SplitReady? Did that get asked
You
already?
know, yeah, there's a couple out there, and it really depends. It's hard to say specifically, right? So there's Divorce Force. They've been around a while. I know at one point they shut down and sort of rebranded, but they're very sort of different in what we do. A place in the same space, but from a different angle. I think I've seen a couple of others, but I'm trying to think what the names of them were. I think there's one that was called like It's Over Easy, but again, they're sort of in a different methodology. You know, I think it comes down to a lot of like when you look at divorce lawyers as an example, right? And you can say, wow, there's all these different divorce attorneys who are competitors, right? You're all competing for people who are getting divorced, but each one of you play in a very different way of doing things, different experience. We're very much more about the process and having it be something where, we're not about therapy. We've got therapists on our platform, but the SplitReady process itself, and actually I should take a minute to talk about that. The assessment is a 5-component assessment or 5-category assessment. And each one of those steps, then once they get on the platform, we'll work them through those steps to come up with an actionable plan. There aren't really anyone who are competitors who are saying, okay, this should be a deliberate process. Like you can take some of the drama and stuff out of it if you look at it from the standpoint of being a very deliberate process with steps that you need to take. And that's, again, that military thinking of like, wow, if you just work through the steps, you can strip out a lot of the uncertainty and then deal with the things that tend to be on an emotional level.
Do you have a criteria for being a member, or if you want to be a member?
No, not really. I mean, it's free. We really want to start building the community, getting a lot of questions in the forums, getting our professionals active in answering those questions. So there's no prerequisites. I mean, the hard part with divorce is figuring out how to make it affordable for people, right? I mean, I think one of the things we looked at is, I think, again, this view of divorce with the two attorneys and either a litigation or a contested divorce, that's not that huge. That's not the majority of the population necessarily. The majority might be going pro se or dealing with a lot of other things. So we really haven't necessarily aimed it at a specific demographic or socioeconomic level. We really think it's good for everybody. I think the people it most resonates with are the ones who are a little more amicable in their approach, who are looking to manage cost. It's very interesting how cost makes a lot of friction go away when people look and say, I don't want to burn it all down.
Yeah, I guess you could have both. I guess you could have both, like both parties on your site.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as divorce gets more and more, I think you're seeing more mediation. You're seeing a little bit more, people buying into more of the collaborative thing. There's more of a hunger to find good information. And I think a lot of our value is you can go on the internet and do a Google search and spend hours and hours and hours sifting through good and bad information. And there's really not a lot of good ways for a client or someone who's considering divorce to determine what's good and bad. Hopefully they don't have enough experience to go, oh, that's wrong. Maybe it's their one and only divorce. We want them to be able to find good information that they know is from vetted and certified professionals. So, and the professionals to be on our platform, we're building that platform right now. There is a subscription cost for them to be on it. But generally for the individual people going through a divorce, no.
Okay, so it's the professionals who have to pay to be on it and certified by under your qualifications?
No, what we've done is we've made a comprehensive list of all the certifications out there.
I see.
When applicable, right? There's some times where you just have to look and say, life experience does matter. So there are times where we'll make the call to say, wow, you know what, this person is a, they've got enough verifiable experience that we can look and say, they didn't get certified, but I know why. They've been doing this for so long and they can verify that they don't necessarily need to be certified.
I see.
But they still pass through a vetting process.
Sure.
I do have another question. It's kind of switching gears a little bit, but it says, if I am divorcing and need to figure out how to deal with our home, how would you help in that situation?
That's a great question. It really, I hate to say it depends, but you know, that's sort of the reality.
Sure, you're not a lawyer.
Well, it depends on where they are in the process. Most of the time you need a divorce decree to be able to determine what to do with the home. If they're at the beginning of the process, as I said, I've built a practice on both originating and consulting. So there is a report that I can put together, not as an originator, as a specialist in the world of mortgages and housing, to be able to say, here's what your options are. And, you know, I've done a couple of those in the last month, and they really help the client. And sometimes it's by both spouses. It helps them sit down and say, what's reality? What is actually feasible? The challenge in the lending world, and I'm going off on a tangent, but I will bring it back, I promise. The challenge in the lending world is most mortgage bankers, mortgage brokers, loan officers only get paid if a loan closes. So they're not incented to help. If a divorce is just starting and they're 9 months out from when they're going to disposition that home, it's very hard for a commission-based salesperson to devote the right time. So that's why I carved out part of my practice to say, you can hire me on an hourly basis or on a cost for the report to help you figure out what you need to do. Go to any other lender at that point. I don't care, but I want to make sure that you know what to do, what not to do, what are viable options, so that you're not spending time arguing over things that don't work. They could sit down with two attorneys and say, here's what we want to do. Get the divorce decree written, and then turn around and try and refinance, and it might not work because they haven't really gone through and seen what's viable. So I can help people that way in the beginning, and I do. If they're toward the end, or if it's before they even file, sometimes we can get a deal done before they file because they're technically married before they file, right? There may not even be separated. In the eyes of the lending world, they're still a married couple, and they could refinance one person off the loan. A lot of it depends on if they need to use child support or alimony. If they need those, they have to wait till the end. So it's a very complex situation, and that's why I got the CDLP, Certified Divorce and Lending Professional certification I did, because I can keep up to date on a lot of the things that come out. It's a great organization. But I always tell people, find the right person to do what you need to do. There's a lot of mistakes that you can make, and if you make these mistakes with ownership, change titling, or moving money around, or doing something with a job, or making certain assumptions, you can actually put yourself in a situation where the loan cannot be done. So I always tell people the best thing to do with the it depends, and this is where I'm kind of coming back, is they really need to talk to somebody like me in the beginning and say, okay, what are our needs for real? Like, what do we need to do? And then determine the course of action. I have a lot of clients come to me and say, hey, I need a pre-approval to figure out if I can refinance the home. Yeah, kind of, but you need to figure out whether you can afford it or what you can afford to afford it. You need someone who's going to work hand in glove with the attorneys, financial advisors, and everyone else, and then go through the right steps so that when you're ready to pull the trigger, you have a better chance of getting it done. A lot of people aggregate loan officers the way they do attorneys, and they say all of them are the same. Not necessarily the case.
So this
Oh, go ahead.
the CDLP, that's Certified Divorce Lending Professional?
Yeah, right now I think it's the only certification out there for lenders to get it. And again, a lot of it is stuff, when I went through the training, it was stuff that I knew, but some stuff that I didn't know. So
Okay.
It's a good organization to be able to keep up to date on some of the interesting things that change. Every time they change the tax laws, every time they change guidelines, as an example, you'll see some changes, like with COVID right now, things change all the time. And if a guideline changes, it's hard enough keeping up on the guidelines for situations where people aren't getting divorced. But then you bring in that overlay of the complexity that comes with divorce. Now you're in a situation where you need to know how to marry those together and make sure that people don't make really, really big mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering too, because we all have had clients that say, I'm going to get this much maintenance, this much child support, I want a pre-approval. Are you saying that's probably not likely?
Well, one, in the eyes of a lender, when they say, I'm going to get this much, and I'm going to get this much child support or maintenance or whatever, in the eyes of a lender, that's not necessarily the case until the divorce decree comes out, right?
see.
Until that happens, they will not count that amount. Now, I think you can do a pre-approval. So any lender can sit down and run numbers. So they could say, assuming this is where this would shake out. The problem is all the different mistakes that can be made from point A to point B that can either set the clock back. Most lenders require, most loan programs require 6 months of verified child support or maintenance coming from the payor to the payee, documented into a separate account.
Right.
Well, there's some really important things about that where people make mistakes. So all things being equal, talking to somebody who can say, yes, I get it. We can look and say, and this is kind of this report that I put together is a pre-approval on like massive steroids, where it says, okay, if you do this, this, and this, here are 4 different scenarios under which you could get or do a refinance. So I'll do an analysis of what is the equity buyout going to look like. That could have a drastic change. That could have a drastic impact on what that final loan looks like. A lot of times I actually work with the attorneys to say, how do we need the maintenance or child support to look? There are times where, depending on the age of the children or something like that, most loan programs require at least 3 years. It's called the 636 rule. 6 months of showing that it's paid, 36 months of future guarantee that it will be paid. There are times where you could be on that bubble, and if you do something wrong, then you can't count the maintenance. So I'll actually work with the attorneys or the mediator to help them craft that agreement so that it works with what the lenders want to see.
Okay. Well, here's a
I think
question.
a lot of times judges will say, when you ask for a recommended time period of how long the person should have to refinance,
Mhm.
I've frequently heard judges say 6 months, but that's, it's not enough. If you're
Right.
gonna,
No,
if
that's
that's your only
exactly right.
income.
That's exactly right.
It's
They should,
interesting.
and the thing is, you could see even with rate fluctuations. I mean, right now we've been in a period of really low rate environment. But 6 months is way too short, especially with things right now like with forbearance. There was a point. It's been rectified more or less now, but there was a point where Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were saying, if you went into forbearance, you have to wait 12 months. Coming out of forbearance, 12 months before you could do a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan. If they had only had 6 months, that would have been a big issue. Now
Right.
they've backed it off to 3 months, but still there's got to be some flex in there. Now, one thing I always do say, and it's interesting that you brought up like a set timeline. I think people look at the set timeline and they say, I have this long to do it, instead of looking and saying, where in that time period is the right time? And they've got to make sure they're talking to a lender throughout, because if they wait till the end and rates move against them, it could mean that they're not able to refinance, and that could be a big issue.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we do have a question. I don't know if necessarily it's for you, Doug, because it looks like I think all of us can really answer this one, but here it is. My husband locked me out of our house. How can I legally get back in? Call the police.
Wow.
That would be my answer.
Open the door with whatever you need to open the door with.
As long as there's no OP. I mean, how did
Yeah.
he get away with locking you out of the house? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, they can't lock you out is I guess the simple answer. So
Unless
you
there's
can
a
call the
court order
police.
saying they can.
Yeah, well, obviously if there's an order. But yeah, I mean, you would just call the police and the police would let you back in. I don't think I've ever seen the police not let somebody back in, if that's where they live. So.
Right. And
Well, the police don't have a
from my world, I would always say it was safety first too, right? You just never know what could be a flashpoint. So I think solving it the right way with the right people, is a good way to keep everyone safe.
Yeah, she says he's a police officer. Well, you would think he would know better.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we have had to go into court on an emergency motion and say, he's locked her out. And, I don't think I've ever had a judge say, okay, well, she has to stay out. The judge would say, let her in, But yeah, you're right. The question more, I guess, would be, even though you're allowed to go in, do you want to go in? That would be the scare part, because if there's some sort of violence awaiting you inside, then, you'd rather stay out, even though you're allowed to stay in. So.
Right. sometimes sorting it out the safe way is the better.
Yeah. I had that question yesterday with somebody I was speaking to, and he was saying that he, you know, he hadn't moved out of the house, and he was complaining that his wife was hitting him. And I'm like, well, turn it around. If it was the other way around and you were the woman that was, you know, being hit by the man, there wouldn't be any question about you going and making yourself safe first. I mean, safety's got to be the first thing that you do. So he's like, well, I think it would be worse if I left. I'm like, what could be worse than being hit? You know, it's just
Right,
like,
right.
get out.
Right.
It's like, yeah. So yeah, the domestic violence throws a different answer on just about everything.
Absolutely.
You often hear people say, I don't want to be accused of abandonment. People think if they leave their house, they're going to be thought that they abandoned their house. It's just not true, but people don't realize that.
Yeah. Mia's still writing. She says, they won't let me in. I don't know who they are, but they won't let me in. I've tried to go to court, and the judge told me I had to go to family court.
Yeah, family court's the place to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, yeah, I guess that's where you're going. But if whoever it is won't let you in, but.
Yes. Are there more questions?
There's a couple. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, and since I came in late, and I'm sorry, I had court. I didn't know what you guys have answered so far, but.
I think we hit the rest of them.
Yeah.
We have hit the rest of them. So I think that's it.
Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if anyone has any questions, can I do a pitch at least?
Sure.
Of course.
If anyone has any questions, they can go to www.splitready.com. For professionals who might be listening and looking at joining, there's a Become a Pro button. You can go there, read all about what it takes to become a professional on our platform, the badge system, that whole thing, and they can schedule time with me. For individuals, you just go, you take the assessment, pretty easy way to go, and can get there. Again, we're kind of in startup mode, so there's going to be more information and more tools and more usability coming in the next couple of months. And then, as always, I like to pitch our podcast, Getting Split Ready. We usually record the second or third Tuesday of every month. We're on anywhere you get your podcasts. We're on, Castbox, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you go. Just Google Getting Split Ready and you'll find us. We also have a YouTube channel, so you can see it either with video or audio as well. And I think that's it. And then our blog is up there too. So, but thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you guys, listeners. I really enjoyed this. And if any of you guys want to join the platform, we'd love to have you guys on there.
Great. Well, think about that.
Sounds like a great idea. Thanks so much, Doug. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.